welcome everyone. Welcome to another Astral interview. And here with me, I have Beverly Zeimet and Maryam Martinez. So, to contrast, like Beverly, you grew up on a farm and you grew up a country girl. Would you say then, Maryam would be a city girl?
No, I was crossed from a country girl, and we kind of went in from country to city. By the time I was 9 years old, we had come from a small town into a big city that I thought it was big at the time. And then, it's really shocking sometimes when you come from that small town into a city.
Right.
And you end up finding yourself with different people around you, energies around you. And, you have a different trust system, I guess you could say.
Right.
And you can't say, when you come into the city and from a small town, that you can't sit there and blame everybody for whatever happens to you in life. Sometimes it's just those things that happen to you in life that help you grow even stronger. Absolutely. And anything that I've ever gone through young or as I've matured into the grandma I am today.
Wow, grandma.
Has been a great empowering force for me. And I believe and I feel that it's all because of my belief in spirit. That's got me here.
Children can be our strength, but children can sometimes be our weakness too, right?
Yes, they can. Oh, they can get under your skin sometimes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about children and how we get over that point when we feel weak because of our children.
Oh, that's a great question. That's food for thought. I have to say I have 3 great kids, and
amazing.
One of the scariest things or the hardest things that I had to share with my kids is when we left little farm country, because they grew up, in a very small, setting where we're in a little town of like 400 people, which counting cats and dogs, right? Then we moved and spent a year of their life out actually on a farm. And then we moved into a little town of less than 100 people. So again, it was small. They were always over at my folks, on the farm. So they grew up in that small arena. They were 8, 9, and 10 when we moved to Denver, Colorado.
Right.
That was huge. The whole culture shock and everything. And, they knew what the reason was. And I did communicate with them. This is why we're going here. And this is what we're doing, because, home life and things in Iowa are just not where they need to be. And it has nothing to do with you. This is between your father and I. And I made sure that they understood that they were not the issue. Right. And they had the option when they got old enough to take care of themselves. They wanted to go back. They could. Well, the conversation I had after moving, to, you talk about massive changes. You couldn't get further from one end of the, pendulum to the other. Right. And, was to where are they going to go now? Right. What's going to happen? Because they were at a vulnerable age in their life. Right. And I had to sit them down and say, you know what, we're here. And this is by choice, by mom's choice, maybe not necessarily by yours. And you've got your feelings and we talked about it and all that kind of stuff. But I said, you have choices even at your age. So we can do one of 2 things. And the only person that's going to affect in the end is you. So you're going to have to live by the choices that you make from this point forward.
Wow, what a serious point to get.
Oh, to. It was a tough talk, but I look back and I'm really glad that I did it, because it helped mold them, because I gave them an in and an out, a choice. I said, you can get into drugs, you can, run away from home, you can flunk out of school, You can be a bully, you can fight, you can do, I gave them all the negative things. Is you can be any of these things. If that's what you want to do,
Right.
then that's okay, because that's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's not going to affect me.
Right.
It's going to affect you.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter to me what you do. It matters what you do. This is at 8, 9, and 10. Right?
Yeah.
So then at the opposite end of the spectrum, I said, you can make the best of it, because we're here and we're here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
when you reach that point where you're on your own, you can choose differently if you choose. So if you want to choose this side, you buckle down, you make the best out of school,
Mm-hmm.
right? You learn, you put things forward, you know right from wrong, you know what your right and wrong is, you know, and where you want to be, because the impact of your choices are an effect on you, not me.
Right.
Will some things make mom sad? Yes. But they're your choices. So you make the choice. Oh, thank God. Thank God they went.
They made the right choices. Well,
yeah,
I think the fact that you gave them the choice empowered them to realize that, you know, there is no reason to rebel now, right? Because I'm getting all the choices.
Yeah, that's right.
I want. So there isn't that ego that can step in and want to rebel now, because they've got all the choices.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So what about you, Maryam? What was that talk you had with, by the way, how old were your children at this time?
How old? My children currently are in their 40s and early or late 30s. So when I would talk to my kids when they were younger, absolutely what Beverly was talking about, you know, it was always about their choices that they made. You know, I didn't want to hear them say, Mom, there's a bully outside.
Right.
What do I do? Go handle it. That was my thing. If they said, well, so-and-so down the street offered me a cigarette and I'm going to smoke it. Well, that's your choice.
Right.
I would tell them all the time, you know, you have to look at yourself and never blame anybody else for the choices that you're making. Right. And you have to instill that, I believe, when they're young.
Yeah.
When before they're 8, you know, 8, 9, all that, but be consistent even when they're in their teenage years. You know, my kids are pretty awesome, to be honest with you. They've overcome some many challenges over the years. And, you know, I've got some great, beautiful grandchildren. And I've got to say that the reflection of me comes out of them.
I would attest to that.
Yes, you've met my grandchildren.
I would attest to that. She's got a beautiful family.
They are amazing. And, you know, they keep me going. They really do. They keep my my life in movement.
Aww.
Because there's been so many things that's happened recently that, you know, I look at it and say, okay, how do I keep on going? Well, I have to look at them. And what I did last year was pretty crazy. I was sitting alone. My husband was in a spinal cord hospital, and I was just
beside yourself.
Find inspiration at that moment. And you know what I started doing is I looked at each and every one of my grandchildren to draw the strength, what I would see in them. And what I did is I sent them a letter letting them know, each of them individually, what I seen their strengths were. What I was drawn, because, you know, being isolated with my husband for 17 months in a spinal cord hospital was pretty traumatic. And I was just searching for an inspiration, because, you know, you can always be inside yourself and grow from that. But sometimes you have to look out to others. And I looked at my grandkids, and that gave me such power. And to this day, they all tell me, I remember that letter you sent me where you found strength in me. And it's very empowering. And I know for Christmas, I had told them all that I wanted them to read them again to me, because I haven't heard them since they read them to me last year over the phone when they received them. So now I want to see their expressions now. They're a year older, a little over a year older. And, you know, I want to see how that affected them. And,
Right.
you know, one of my granddaughters, she came to me one day and she said, you know, that was really great that you sent me a letter like that. And her passion has always been slime. She loves slime. She could sell you slime. She could make slime. She's all about the slime of making.
Right.
And just that passion alone, I told her, I draw from your strength of that passion, because you have something that you are so passionate about that you will make up a game or a business just so you can have that, because your mom forbids it to be in the house because you always get it all over. So just thinking that, you know, was inspiring to me. And I wrote her a note telling her about that. So of course, you know, a few months back, I was going through a really difficult time, and she's very intuitive when she sees that. So she brought up the letter, which brought me right back to, wow, look at that power you got, you know. I love that power.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it came right back to you, like full circle almost, that she was able to do for you at a time when you needed her, you were able to do for her as well. So it was synchronous in that sense.
Absolutely. You know, family, great friends that have pulled me through this. I've just been really blessed every time I've turned around. You know, Beverly has gotten me from, I would say in the last 9 months, from point A to right now, I think I'm at M.
I'd say closer to R.
Maybe to R.
Yeah, I was on the
I'm not at Z yet. I'm not at Z yet.
When she gets to Z, she'll be like me, right?
I'll be like all over.
Yeah, I think what Maryam should do, and Shara, I think you might agree. I think what she needs to do is have each one of those grandchildren sit down and write her a letter.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, you know, you've written them letters. Have they written back to you?
Yeah, what are the strengths that they draw on from their grandma?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, one of my other granddaughters, she had wrote about me as a businesswoman many years ago. I was her topic at school, and somebody she looked up to at the time in business. And it was pretty amazing that she wrote that. Not once, but twice she put me in you know, one of her talks. And to me, that was just such an honor that my granddaughter, so young at the time, had seen all this greatness in me. And I wasn't really seeing it in myself at the time. And that put me right back saying, you know what? I am pretty cool.
I just met you today, and I think you're really cool too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. So, we talked about children. We talked a little bit about how they give us strength. We talked about the weaknesses they can create too. And this letter idea, I really like this letter idea. We should do something with that, you know, where you, grandchildren or children write to you and you write back to them. This is a good idea. I think it should happen more often.
Yeah, it was fun.
You know, absolutely. So letter writing is a spiritual tool in a sense as well. We'll all agree, I'm sure, that it can create it'll allow you to bring your soul outside of you in truth, right? And so journal writing or automatic writing or any of these things are all tools, metaphysical, that can also be very effective in coming to that place where you know yourself better, right? And so working with your children, what an amazing idea. What an amazing idea.
You know, I think it's a great reflection when we were talking about, you know, that reflection when what you see in others is what you see in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Right. So when you do write that letter and you're picking up that in the other person and you're sharing that with them, I think you need to read it back and also say, wow, you know what? For me to see that in them, I had to be an expression of it within myself. And if I'm not,
absolutely,
I better be some of this.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you know, it was the greatest time in my life to write it because, you know, I was going through a lot of emotional challenges at the time, and just reflecting and being alone with myself, it was perfect to reflect on them, because now it's just like a mirror. I'm seeing myself in them all the way through it. And that's building my self-confidence and my self-worth. Even though I was going through such a difficult time at that moment. My husband had went through a period where we didn't know if he was going to live or die. So, and he was on life support. So it was really traumatic. And to reflect that way, I look at it now and think, wow, that really empowered me as well as empowered them. So I like the idea that you say, you know, go back and have them write something on me now of what they've seen. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anyone who's watching this might want to take that up as an exercise too for themselves, because what a powerful thing, and what a way to build a relationship with your child or grandchild, to be able to write little things back and forth with you. You know, it's a more intimate relationship now, because you're seeing
a formal way of communication too, and I think communication gets lost.
Oh, yes.
Right. And so when you're writing it, it kind of moves the emotion out of it, so to speak, where you can come from the heart and just let it flow. When you're in a conversation, there may be an interruption, right? And then it loses its power, you know, to where it was going, you know, whether a phone rings or a dog barks or somebody rings the doorbell, you know,
or your mom comes and interrupts you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Too funny. Okay, so we're here and now. You're with your kids. You've gone through your trials and struggles in your lives. We all have, we all do. And it takes us to that point of, you know, I can't take it anymore, or, you know, I'm at my wit's end, right? That point, that turning point where you can either choose to go downhill or uphill. And so what advice do each of you have for somebody who's at that point and needs to somehow get themselves the strength to take them out of it?
You know, I think I found for me is that, you know, some people say you should never be alone when you're under that kind of stress. I believe that you have to take care of yourself even more at that moment. And once you are in that second or that moment, really learning how to release it, because it's not yours. It's not your stress. It's not anything you can change. All you can do is release it, and then just, you know, hope and, well, not hope. Open yourself up for the guidance.
Right.
That's it.
So in a way, is it a gift then?
I'm sorry?
In a way, is that moment a gift then to you?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a gift that you give yourself once you release it, and you know, the guidance will come, and it will play out any way it needs to. You can't force it. You can't change it. You can't plan it. You know, I've done a lot of planning in life, and, you know, you feel that you're on the right track, but then if you hit that dead wall or that brick wall, what do? Most people will just stay there.
Right.
They're not going to climb the wall. They're not going to dig a hole underneath the wall. They're not going to look on the side of the wall to see if they can get out of it.
Right.
A lot of people will just stand there in the wall. And, you know, I believe that you got to release it at that moment if you hit that brick wall, and it will come to you. What you got to do next? Do you climb it? Do you go around it? Do you start digging under it? You know,
right. I love that.
It's not up to you to figure it out. It's up to you to just let it be.
So you mentioned a bit back about how your children and grandchildren are very intuitive. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about intuition and what exactly intuition is, and what makes you feel that your children are intuitive, or what does that mean to you?
Oh gosh, you know, I look back when my boys were in high school, right? And all my kids are very intuitive, you know, right. Some embrace it and some don't. Yeah. And when they've been around their mom all their life, and yeah, she was kind of weird sometimes, right? And they grew up in a metaphysical background, you know, once we made that move to Denver. So they really started to understand and saw things from a different light.
Right.
Right. And they can make their choices, you know, of what they wanted to do with their beliefs in, right. you know, in their God, so to speak. Right. And with the intuition, that knowingness, my oldest one was very sensitive with it, and he always wanted to deny it. Right. Aww. But when it was working for him and he could get what he wanted, or, you know, work the kids in school, or, you know, whatever, to make the outcome when he was choosing, hey, he was all for it, but he didn't call it intuition. Right.
Right.
And I can remember, when he was out of high school and he started working, and he started using that intuition when he was going out to do jobs. And then the people that were, you know, the guys that were with him that had to work, usually there was one or two other people, right? And he would come up with something. He said, this is what we're going to expect at this house, you know, so we're going to have to be prepared to do this, because they were putting in dishwashers and stoves and, you know, equipment like that, right? And some of the challenges they were going to meet in this house, and he had never seen them. And so he's telling them, so these are things we're going to get prepared for. So we're going to have to figure out a way to do this, that, and the other thing, right? And sure enough, it would be that way. And they would look at, how did you know? Did you come here first? You know, and no. So it started to be a game. He started using it as a game. But again, it also gave him the opportunity to really become resourceful in his thinking processes. Right.
Amazing.
So, and still to this day, he uses it. He won't call it that, but all the kids do. My daughter is more open to it, you know, and she's coming into more of her power right now, and really starting to impact, you know, her life and what she's doing. Right. And she's 40. Let's see, what are my kids now? They're 51, 50, and 49. This is crazy. I know. Hey, I got great grandkids. I've been around a while or two.
Just a minute. Well, you both look amazing for
well, you know, it's that mindset. It's your belief, you know. You are who you are, you know, and what you believe. You know, for me, my truth is I'm 45, because at 45 to me is I had the world by the tail, you know. I had everything going for me. You know, and it's like,
and still do.
I do, right? And I'm only 45. I got a lot of living to do, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about you, Maryam?
You know,
when it comes to intuition and your kids?
Intuition and my children, you know, I think they're all coming into their own realization. And their intuition, I just have to step to the side and just let them grow in their own way. I have found, not try to guide them or anything. My grandchildren, they're amazing. They know more than me some days. I just am blown away from them. technology wise, you know, just their mindset. A lot of them, I just sit there and go, wow, you guys are great. So, you know, they teach me on a daily basis. What I do like though is what Beverly was saying about, you know, coming into themselves, and however they describe that is the key, because it's about the individual. It's not about mom or dad or whoever. It's about the person, and that's what you have to release and learn as you watch your kids grow up and leave home, while they go through their own challenges in life, and then have children of their own, and how you look at them raising their children and how you've learned to kind of step back. And I think that's the beauty where I'm at right now is, you know, I get to not only be there with my grandchildren and see all their wonderful, amazing gifts that they all hold, but I get to share that now with their moms or their dads. And I'll tell them, and they look at me and they go, where do you see that? And I'm like, oh, I do.
Everything.
Yeah. You know, I want to add something, you know, about your children, you know, because I've had an opportunity over the last few months being, you know, close by here with the situation with Maryam's husband, you know, on his journey out, and to be able to be there with the girls, you know, with the grandkids, and interacting with them as someone from the outside coming in, right, versus being in it all the time. And one thing that I did notice after his passing, you know, when, you know, at the funeral and at the service that we had at the house, a little service and stuff in the gathering, was the openness, you know, and I always let them know that if they needed to talk, I was a safe zone for them, because they really got to know and trust me.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right.
And to be able to listen to what they were feeling. Right. You know, because everybody was going, oh, how are you feeling? Oh, I know you're so sad. No, don't tell them what they feel. Right. It's just give them an opportunity. You know, if you know, do you have anything you want to say? Do you have anything you want to get out? It's okay. Just express what you're feeling. It's okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. And they could do that because, again, when you hear those thoughts, it creates a whole different response than if you keep thinking them. So it's important to get that thinking thought out into words, because it gives a clarity. And so for me, it was an honor to be able to be there at that time, to be just to be a safe zone and a sounding board and an expression that they could just let it out. How their anger, their upset, their pain, their uncertainty, their, you know, their grief, their, you know, all of these different levels, you know, and almost just, you know, agree with them and let it be, you know, and even push a button so that they go a little bit deeper in that expression. Because now it was up and out. And once it's up and out, now they can face it and move through it so much easier. So it's an honor to be able to do that for someone, regardless of who they are, whether they're a total stranger or whether they're your best friends or, you know, a spouse or whatever the case may be, you know, to allow that other person to be an expression of what they feel in the moment that they're feeling it. Don't judge them. Don't tell them anything of what, you know, what to do or how to take care of it. Just let them express it, hear it in their own voice, and then just say, it's okay.
Yeah, you've been a blessing. She was a godsend for sure to the last few months. Beverly has been amazing, not only for me, but to my children and my grandchildren. She has stepped up and, you know, she's been there for every single one of us. Because, you know, when you do go through challenging times, such as that, your emotions are very high and you're not quite sure if you're doing the right things for your family at the time.
Right.
And looking over and seeing my buddy here, you know, with my grandchildren and getting them through it was amazing to see, because I didn't have to jump over it and say, okay, let me put my grief to the side,
Right.
and help my children and grandchildren through it. Beverly was like my right arm there.
As your surrogate.
Yeah, she was my surrogate there.
You know, because, you know, everyone's going through it, you know, and you never recapture that moment when you put yourself on the sidelines, because now you become in denial of yourself because you had to be strong for them, that you really don't be honest with yourself and your own feelings. And then again, what do? You put yourself on the back burner, and that's not healthy, you know. So to be there in that capacity for someone is an honor. And
it was an honor to have you there as well.
So and I think as a community, I think we need to group together more and be there for one another.
And be there for one another. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and grief is one of those things that we all have to deal with in our lives. Some of us deal with it young, some of us deal with it when we get older. And for a young person to deal with grief is much more traumatic than for an adult to deal with grieving, because they've dealt with it so many times already. But what metaphysical tools would you say you were able to use to help your children through this process of grief?
Oh, wow. You know, I would say probably, you know, looking back on the different deaths that have transpired, you know, in my life and in my children's lives, especially a gentleman that stepped up to the plate when my kids were pretty young and came into their lives and became that father figure. And they call him dad. That was their dad. It doesn't take a gene pool to create a dad.
No, absolutely not. It takes a lot.
It does. And, you know, that acceptance and that love and that connectedness is powerful. When in his passing, to be there for my kids, you know, because when Bill and I went our separate directions, we never stopped loving each other.
No, of course not. Yeah.
We knew that our lives were going in different directions, and we didn't want to hold each other back from fulfilling what that was. But we journeyed together in different directions, but still kept that unit, which was really awesome, which I think is also a lesson that the kids learn too, right? Just because you're not in the same household with someone doesn't mean you stop caring or stop loving. It's love even more because you set that person free to be who they are. So in that passing, it was more of a beautiful thing because they had an opportunity to complete what they wanted to say rather than saying, I could have, should have, I didn't. And I think that's a lesson everyone can learn. You know, speak how you feel now. Don't wait until you don't get the chance to. And I think this whole pandemic has taught us a lot about separation. How many family members are not able to be visited? How many family members are exiting the planet without a family member there, without having that connectedness, right? You know, so it's a wake-up call, I think, on so many levels of what's going on. So when you talk about where does the metaphysical come, I think that's that true essence of spirit, right? Where you're so connected with that divine intelligence, that God force, that light. I mean, there's a lot of different names that get used, but it's all the same energy that you unite with that feeling and that power and that all-knowing, because the only thing that leaves is the avatar skin bag you're in.
Right, of course.
Right? And the spirit are always there. And when you look at that intuitiveness and to really bring that out and allow a child to be an expression of intuition and knowingness, it's okay to talk to spirits. Know what they're saying.
Yeah.
You know, what's the spirit, what's the intention of them, and to really help them grow. No different than what's the intention of the physical person that you're
Absolutely.
in communications with, right?
Absolutely.
So it's learning, what's integrity and distinguishing, in between which is and what isn't. And to be able to do that once a loved one does exit their avatar skin bag, right? Now you still have connection with that spirit.
Right.
And you can learn so much more because there's not a barrier there. And the communication lines are fully open. So metaphysics, or the spiritual, ness, is a growth, I think, that is probably misunderstood in a lot of instances.
Mm-hmm.
And being in this awakening, and we've heard awakening. Well, if 2020 wasn't a wake-up call, I don't know what it was, right?
Right.
And so it's now it's getting back in the truth of who you are, finding that spirit, finding that soul essence of who you are,
Right.
and start interacting soul to soul versus, right?
I love what you said there, in that you said, it's this avatar that leaves, right? The soul's still there. And in a sense, you often hear, their soul's going to be taken up, or their soul's going to leave, or whatever. But maybe the soul doesn't leave, and we know it doesn't leave because there is nowhere to go. It's all in the same place. So it's really the body that disintegrates.
Yeah, it's just a different dimensional space,
right?
Yeah.
Just shifting perception a little bit to say, yes, this isn't real. It's the other that's real, the spirit world that's real. And this is what's going to leave, not the spirit world. It's always here. So it always was here. It'll always be here. All this physical mess is what's not here and appears to be here.
The concept of no time and space is probably one of the hardest things to really soak up in the consciousness of who you are, right? And when you're in daydreaming time, or off in thought, or meditation, or prayer, or even getting on the computer, going into dimensional realities, that virtual reality, the gaming platforms, all of those things are what? They're just a different reality. But in essence, what reality is your perception of the events taking place in your personal life. Right. That's your reality. And the only person that can change your reality is you. Wherever you take the spirit of you is the reality of who you are. Right. So it's interesting when you do a play on words and what they mean and the directions, and again, it boils into perception. Yeah, absolutely. And changing our perception is so important, right? Because that perception, a friend and I discovered years ago that we don't want to use the word bless you anymore. We want to use the word be more you, because we don't want to be less. We want to be more, right? We want to be more someone. We don't want to be less someone. And so little things like that enter your life out of the unknown, or that you realize, it's important, I think, to bring them into your reality and exercise them, not let it just be a passing phase, but actually actualizing it. Right. Well, again, we talk about these play on words. How many times have you spoke yourself, that I love that person to death? Right. I know. And you should be saying, love that person to life. That's right. That's right. It's like, why would you want to die and love that person? It's like, why don't you love them when you're living, right? Because if you're not living, you're dying, right? So really be careful. Again, it goes back to what we said earlier in the conversation. Be careful with diet, or even the word diet. Yeah. Even diet. That's right. What are the first three letters of diet?
Yeah. That blew me away way back in the day. Yeah. I would be like, why do I want to go on a diet? Yeah. I mean, it sounds like I'm dying already.
Well, because it's the lack of, so if you're on a diet, it means that you don't get to eat.
Right.
Now you're going to starve. So therefore you're going
and your
to
brain
die.
is freaking out. Your mind is going, no, I'm alive.
That's right. And so there'll be that dichotomy and that tug of war between your mind and what your body's doing, which is exactly not what you want to do when you're trying to, or attempting to, be more fit. Let's say that.
Yes.
So be conscientious of the words that come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
Changing my eating habits would be much better.
So did each of you basically with your children give them, say, whether it's claircognizance or clairaudience or clairsentience or all these clairs, did you actually sit down your children and teach them about these? Because you're from a medical family, or did it just come naturally?
I think mine came naturally.
Same here. It's just a natural flow.
You
live it when you be it and you live it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Seeing is believing, doing, walking the talk type of thing. Because you can talk all you want, but if you don't put it into action, does it really mean anything? Yeah,
true. And so really the words and the definitions, really, they're not even needed if you're living your spirit reality, because you're
your truth.
Pick it up naturally.
Yeah, live your truth.
Yeah.
And if it was truth today and tomorrow it's not, then live the new truth and let the old one go.
It's okay.
Right? Yeah.
It's okay.
That's part of that growth.
Yeah. Because what we may believe today is the best path, or our choices that we make today maybe aren't tomorrow.
Your database of information changes.
Right.
Yeah. So when that database of information changes,
it takes me back to a conversation my 16-year-old granddaughter told me the other day. I may be like this today, but tomorrow I might be different. And I looked at her and I said, and that's okay.
That's right.
It's okay. It's okay. If you like this today and tomorrow you decide you don't like it, I'm okay with that too.
I want to share something, of what transpired here. I mean, a lot of people don't have the person that's on their journey, at the end out. They're somewhere else. They're, grandma and grandpa live over here, or they're in a hospice, or they're in a hospital room, or they're somewhere in a care facility. Well, what happened here with Maryam and her husband, they were staying in their daughter's home where their grandchildren resided. Okay. And so he was there for 9 months?
9 months.
That they were there and they saw grandpa every single day coming downstairs. He was there.
Yeah.
Right. He was able to interact. He was in a wheelchair, but he could interact. He could laugh. He could play. He could still give them words of wisdom and stuff. And they had that time, valuable time. But when it got closer towards, especially like that last month, and they started really seeing him deteriorate, he could hear them, but he wasn't able to really interact like he had been. Mm-hmm. And to watch that and be there every single day. And then all of a sudden, that day ended, and the next morning, it was an empty room.
Yeah.
Right.
There's such a sudden drop off, right?
Right. It wasn't a gradual thing. I mean, they watched him, go downhill, all of that. But again, it's hard enough to grasp as an adult watching that and being there and living through it. Right. But to be at the different ages that they were, and each one of them had something different that they felt. Yeah. Right. In how they reacted to that. And you got little girls and you got little boys and you got young men, right? And to be able to see that, it's not something that's an everyday occurrence. It used to be.
No,
But I think it was special, and I think this is something that is going to be with them forever, to give them a gratitude of things. Right now, they're not seeing the gratitude in it, because they're still feeling the loss.
Yeah.
But as each day gets better and better, it gets easier and easier. There will come a time in their life that they are going to value the time that they had right up to that moment to be there.
Absolutely.
To say, wow, he's free.
Because the majority of people don't get to do that, right?
No. So it was a blessing in disguise.
It was.
Yeah.
And
you mentioned
going through a hard time for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned they each went through a different feeling and a different experience. You want to talk about that a little bit? What their different feelings were, or how they expressed their experience?
Ooh, some were extreme anger.
Yeah.
Right? It's how dare you leave? You were supposed to be here when I graduated. You're supposed to be here to see me walk down the aisle and get married. You were supposed to be, things like that. And it's like, but
then they realize, Papa suffered.
Right.
He suffered a lot. He was quadriplegic, and he had to be cared for 24/7, and they helped in that care with me. The last few months that he was, leaving us, he became even more so, because before there was hope of him regaining his mobility again, and they were all excited. Now there's something inside him that's going to take him, and that was traumatic to see. Not only that, it surfaced. So, I had to keep most of it away from them. And at one point, one of them had seen this cancer on him, and because I always had it covered up, and they just went, oh my gosh, how is he handling this? Wow. Are you okay, Papa? And he's not saying much at this point, because he's already going in that path of leaving us. And
but it's a testimonial of endurance as well, I think, for the kids to watch what their Papa went through, their grandpa, in that experience, that it doesn't matter how bad things get, there's always something on the other side that's going to brighten the day, brighten the moment, the lesson to be learned. And this is endurance. When they get challenges in their lives, they're going to remember this day. They're going to remember what their grandpa went through and what he did to overcome and to go beyond until it got to the point where it consumed him. And then he had to surrender to the circumstance and say, now is my time. And no one to hold him and no one to fold him, so to speak. Right. And so the lessons that they've learned through this experience is going to impact them for the rest of their lives. They don't see it now, but they will.
Yeah. And, they are all at peace, which, I've checked in with every single one of them, and I asked them of their feelings, and knowing what their Papa had gone through the last few months, they are more at peace that he's no longer in pain, that he's running in a field, or he's, fishing, or he's doing something he loved before. And, that warms my heart, because it shows me how close they are to their own spirit, to their own selves. Which I draw from, and I'm like, oh, please tell me more. I need to get out of my rut right now.
So well, I think you need to be an expression of some of the angers that you're feeling that you're still suppressing. Or the kids, it was like they just blurted out because we made that possible for them. We gave them permission to just spit it out so they could get past that. Absolutely. To where now they can really be at peace.
And it's really awesome to watch, because they're so young and going through this. I wish I had more of that when I was younger, but when I was growing up, I was more suppressed. So of course I'm more reserved. I call it reserve. But I noticed that I don't have that expression, and it's hard for me to let go of some things. And I'm just getting around to doing that, and that in itself is I've learned from them.
Right. And was it for them? Was it for your children like the very first death that they've experienced?
Yes, for my grandchildren, yes. For my children, I would have to say yes on that part as well, because,
wow.
You know, one of my kids, they didn't even want to, a couple of them anyway, not just one, but a couple of them couldn't grasp it. They didn't want to see it. They didn't want to experience it.
Right.
And then, you know, two of them lived it daily, especially there at the end. One of them, she was there every single day. Now our daughter that we live with, and we share a home with, she come home and that was her life, you know, and she got through that. But prior to that, 3 years ago, she had lost her spouse. So, you know, she had already lived something and now reliving it through her dad now instead of a husband. So she was very strong for me. She's my oldest daughter, and she was very strong there for me. She held me up and kept me going without me even realizing it, because she had things taken care of.
Right.
And I kind of thought, how is she doing this? Well, she's doing what I would have done, take care of it, you know? So, you know, you sit back and you end up seeing your children taking charge. And those are the things that you implanted in them at a young age of how to do things. And
so many things were done pre, you know, because it, you know, when the end is coming, right? And so if you take care of those things a little bit at a time, they don't get overwhelming in the emotion of the actual, you know, loss. And, you know, she had all that done, you know, and Maryam said, oh, we have to do this and we have to do that. And she goes, Mom, quit thinking about those things. They're all done.
Yeah.
I done it months ago. Right?
She took care of everything. And,
and you didn't even know she did.
Uh-huh.
And you didn't even know she did. She did that.
Yeah. She took care of everything. She told me, don't worry about anything. And I didn't. I continued to care for my you know, her dad, my spouse, took care of everything. And when everything came to a halt and we had to step into that,
the new role,
the new reality at that moment, it was done. It was peaceful. It was, I was honored to be there. And all I did was let go. You know, I let go of any control that I was trying to gain in that time frame. And I think that's what I've learned the most out of this in the last 2 years, is that you can't control anything. You can plan all you want, but when life is coming around, sometimes you have to just give up the control. And there are people around you. I have friends and family and loved ones that have picked me up in so many different ways that I am, you know, I'm just grateful for. And that's love. Absolutely. That's true love.
That's true love. When it's unconditional and when you're doing it strictly out of compassion and kindness and there's no gain for you, that's true love. That's true unconditional love. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, I always thought I had this abundance of love inside me. But when you take care of someone, you know, it's a rocky road. You're not sure if it's you, if it's what's going on, you know, is it a burden? Is it not a burden? You have this wave that you're on and you're trying to learn how to balance in it. And I've got to say that once I realized I could not control anything, all I could do is be there with that unconditional love of support.
Yeah.
And kindness.
Yeah, move the mind games out of the way. And I think, you talked about the metaphysical, Cheryl.
Yeah.
I think that's what metaphysics means, is really that unconditional everything, that unconditional connection, that bonding, that support, that love, all of those things.
Yeah.
That is what the metaphysical
Absolutely.
world, the spiritual world of the spiritual is all about, because we're all one.
Absolutely.
All one.
Absolutely.
And it's time that we unite as that and just
Absolutely.
be there unconditionally.
Yeah.
For each other.
I absolutely agree with you, because the more we do that, the more we realize that separation isn't the answer, but coming together is.
Yeah.
The more we'll grow, and the more we'll evolve as a society, as a community. I mean, if you think of channelers, Abraham, Bashar, they channel, but they're a collective. They speak from a we vantage point,
right,
not an I vantage point, right? So I wonder sometimes, like, were those communities that finally realize that they're one, and now they're existing somewhere as a one and able to communicate with us, right?
right.
And maybe there's a day when we'll get there as a one too, and have our community as a one versus all these little individual.
And it starts here. Why not start it here?
Yes.
In our little skin bag avatars, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's that road to harmony. That's the road to harmony.
Right. And this is what we know too. Like, we don't have everything else outside is chaos, and whatever it is, it's the unknown. But this, right? You know yourself. You know this avatar, even though it's not going to be around forever. You know it right now, and you consider it a blessing and live through it with it as a blessing, and your life will change.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So before we leave today, can we sum up I love this conversation we've had, because it's sort of evolved around your children. And so I want to go back to staying in that topic. And what advice do you have for anyone else that's going through what Maryam went through out there right now? What advice do you have? What summing up advice do you have that you can give them to help pull them through their situation?
Well, one thing I would say, and this goes back, I think, even into my childhood and being where I am now, and I've seen a lot through the ages, is, growing up where I grew up, if a child was, had died in a car wreck or whatever the circumstances, everybody came together as a family, whether it was a grandparent or a parent or a sibling. It didn't matter. Whatever that death was,
right?
Families came, kids were present in the viewing.
Right.
They saw the person, in still motion, shall we say, right? It wasn't denied.
Right.
And, so it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to expose my kids to a dead person.
Right.
Because it's going to be traumatic. As a child, it is not traumatic.
Because they don't know the difference between trauma or not trauma.
And they're going to have questions. Well, why isn't this person there anymore?
Right.
Well, where did they go? They have no closure, right? They have no closure. And now this person, this child is an adult, and so if you've got someone that's 20, 30, 40 years old and have never seen someone die, and someone close to them, maybe a child or a partner or a parent or a grandparent.
Yeah.
And now for the first time in their life, they see a motionless body.
Yeah.
There's
the trauma.
There's your trauma. Mm-hmm. So my advice would be, expose your children to the events that you think are going to be saving them, that better for. Not so much. Life experiences are life experiences. Help them understand it. Have a conversation with them. Let them ask you the questions. I can remember when I had a partner that we were together just shy of 2 years. And
Right.
when he passed, my nephew and I were very, very close. And I had, you know, Roland and I had been there quite a few times. He was 4 when Roland exited the planet. Well, okay. He wasn't sure. He had lots of questions, but I had, you know, Roland's wishes were to get cremated.
Right.
And, you know, we traveled in an RV, and it was probably, I want to say maybe 2.5 months after everything had transpired. I found myself in Wyoming, where they were at their house, and he had all kinds of questions for me. So we're in this conversation, and I said, would you like to go see Roland? And he goes, yeah. His eyes get real big, right? And my sister was like, oh, you better explain this one, because this is all on you, right?
Right.
So we went out, and I showed him. I opened up the box, and he got to put his fingers in the ashes, and we found a little bone, you know, and we're talking about it. He found it fascinating. There was no trauma.
Yeah.
He found it fascinating, you know, and then you go to the story, you know, from dust you came, to dust you shall return, right? And so this is kind of what happened. So this is God's way of saying, okay, he was done living in his body, and so this is what happened, and poof, he came dust, right? You put it in the language for the age of who you're speaking with, and he was 4 years.
Of course.
He had no problem with that, right? So we closed everything up, and then my sister came out with Holden's little brother that was 2 at the time. And so we're in the back, because I just come from a show where I had a lot of products and stuff that were left over, shampoos with essential oils and lotions and all that kind of stuff. So we were in the back, and she was picking and choosing. And I burned incense. You're going to love this story. I burned incense in the front. And so incense, dust is dust, right?
Right. Of course.
And so he's up there playing, and Karen goes, is he okay up there? Says, yeah, nothing he can get into, right? He knows what he can get into and not get into it. He's fine. So we're back here doing this, and he's playing now in the incense dust. He's got it all over his little hands. He comes back, right? And he goes, hey, Mom, look, right? Well, where did my sister go? She saw Roland's ashes all over.
Oh, my God.
I knew what it was, and I had, before she could, like, you know, choke this kid, right? It was like, Karen, stop, right? And she's like, what? I said, that is incense dust, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God. You know, so again, before you go off, know what you're going off for. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So our imaginations and our thought patterns can take us through different things, because, you know, because we experience trauma and events differently than the eyes of a child. And being in what I call my wisdom years now, because I got grandchildren and great grandchildren and you know, great and grand nieces and nephews and stuff, and to be able to be on this side of it, I really understand now what the indigenous people did in the civilizations from past times. Is the young adults were growing up and having fun and learning things, right? And that middle age, the parent age, were off doing what? You know, making sure food got in, making sure
the things were, the everyday things were being done.
Right. And where were the elders? They were the ones that were teaching the wisdom to the children.
Absolutely. The grandparents.
Right. And what do we do as a civilization?
We separate them.
We stick them in a home behind a locked door.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you serious?
Yeah, I was raised by my grandma, and it was the most, when I think about love, the truest love I knew was the love my grandma had for me. So when I go out looking for love, I want love to match that love.
Right.
And you don't.
And I don't.
Yeah.
I know.
That's why you kicked that one out, right?
Yeah. It's like, this isn't
You know,
love.
so it,
I know what love is. This isn't it.
right. So, you know, in passing what you were saying, you know, what would I leave them with is to don't try to hide things that
Right.
you think might be traumatic. Because when you can share with them the events of life, these are facts of life, let them see them at the moment in time that it is. Let them ask questions. Don't tell them. Let them ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then answer them to the best of your knowledge. And if you're not sure how to answer that, you say, you know what? I'm not sure how to answer that, but I bet we can find somebody who does.
Right. Absolutely.
But it takes them right back to where they have their own intuitive moments.
Yes.
Because, you know, each of my grandchildren, I noticed while they were growing up, especially babies, they played with spirits. They played all the way up. And like we had a really great friend of ours had passed away. And I remember my grandson, he looked over, he was probably about 2 years old at the time, maybe 3. And he looked over and he goes, "Hey, Dano, how you doing?" And I looked at my grandson and I said, "Who you talking to?" And he said, "Dano, he's sitting right there." I said, "Oh, tell him hi." And, you know, I didn't think nothing of it. Yeah. And he stayed gibberishing with him for a good couple minutes and it was done. And every once in a while he would tell, you know, as he got older, he started losing that. And, you know, he's 17 now. And, you know, he keeps on telling me now that his papa has transitioned, that he was glad that he was there.
Right.
And he knows that he's in a better place and he's happy for that. And I just got to take it back to when he was 2 or 3 years old, talking to our friend that had passed on, you know. So to me, I think if we hide things from our children, which I was very sheltered when I was a child, I was only told and never seen death, never seen birth, never seen any of that. But I experienced all that once I was able to, you know. The first person I seen that was in a funeral home, I think I was like in my 20s, and it was, you know, like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Yeah.
And at that point, I became afraid of it because I didn't get to live it. What I've noticed my grandchildren now, they're not afraid. Right. We have my, you know, their papa's ashes in the front room, and they're okay with them. They're okay with them. They say hi to them every once in a while, and, you know, they pass and they make sure I'm okay.
Right.
Are you okay? Or they'll come up and give me a hug and they say, everything's okay. Or, you know, Papa wouldn't want you to cry. If they see me crying, they don't even know why I'm crying. They don't know if it's Papa related or if I just cut my finger, but they'll come up and give me a hug, and right away they're assuming that I need that hug because I'm missing Papa.
Right.
And granted, many times I have been, but you know, sometimes it's like I just stubbed my toe. Or, you know, I cut my finger over here. I'm crying because, you know, I'm trying to bandage myself up here.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, if you allow your children to, or grandchildren in my case, to grow and experience that, how they have a different outlook on it.
Right. It's a fact of life.
Mm-hmm. It is.
You know, it's you there's certain things you can shelter, but there's a lot of things that shouldn't get sheltered. No, right. And we do that thinking that we're helping them, we're saving them. We don't want them to be traumatized, when in essence, it may not be the best thing to do. You know, life events are going to happen continuously.
Absolutely.
And it's sooner the exposure, and let them freely talk about it. I think the world will be a lot friendlier place and a lot less traumatic.
You know, another thing is, I've always had a tendency with my grandchildren, because, you know, they've had a lot of, we've had a lot of medical challenges in our lives over the years. And every time I get them all together, I always ask them, what are you grateful for today?
Absolutely. So important.
And you know what? It's amazing to hear what they're grateful for. And guess what? Not all of them want to be grateful for the same thing. Absolutely not. If you're grateful for mama today, guess what? I'm going to be grateful for papa. You know, and just having them sit there and talk about what they're grateful for has been so inspiring for me, because I believe that you have two things in life that you should always have in your heart, and that's love and being grateful.
Right.
And that, I believe, is something that we have to open in everyone's heart.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you, ladies. I've exhausted my questions. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to tell me or ask me or
You know,
say that,
I think
yeah,
the audience is probably saying, wow, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah. These guys are way too.
To sum up, I think we talked about some fun things, writing letters to each other, your kids or your grandchildren and you. Asking them what they're grateful for. What a great idea. Right. And Beverly, you mentioned, you know, when you're communicating with children, that it's important to ask questions at their level, at their age level, and to be also open to the reality that, you know, you don't need to treat them like a child. You can treat them at an intelligent level and let them make their choices. So those are three very important points we take away with us in this dialogue of metaphysics, children, and the tragedy of a death in the family for a child. So I thank you, ladies, for joining me today. Thank you for helping us delve into this really deep subject. And I hope to have you again on our show. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
Absolutely. It was fun. Normally it's only one person, so it was a lot of fun to do it with two, and that it flowed really well. We interacted really well, and you have a similar, well, you both went through the same thing together because Beverly was being a friend to you. And so really, it's not two that I'm interviewing, it's one that I'm interviewing. And again,
we're all
one. Absolutely. Well, I love you, ladies.
Hey, we love you too.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.